you this story on purpose because remember when I was talking about how life happens on life's terms? When you're a real estate agent, you need to show properties and go up and down 2-3 flights of stairs. Do you think having a broken leg is convenient? Do you think that it will give you an excuse to quit and not do what you need to do? Absolutely. And that's why like-minded people matter so much. Because I also found out that year that I was having a son. So I had no option but to be successful. And then the following year, I got involved here and I got involved in the board and I was sitting in a lot of these seats and I was learning as much as I could about my industry. The following year in 2017, they actually gave me the Realtor of the Year award, which I was very grateful to receive. And that was my second year in the industry. Now, why is that important? The reason why this is important is all I'm saying is I've been through this and I've been doing this since then. And now in 2022, a lot of what I do is I bring in the speakers. Before COVID, they used to fly me around the country to speak about real estate. The reason why that's important is because all I'm saying is even though I've only been doing this for about 7 years, I do have a little bit of experience of what it takes to be successful. I've been able to help start a brokerage and go from 1 agent to around 100. Where we're doing close to, we're thriving for $500 million in sales. So the whole point of that is I don't just sell a lot myself. I'm very good at teaching other people how to succeed in sales as well. So in order to succeed in sales, we need to know what's the barometer. How do we know if we're successful? In order to know if you're successful, you need to know if you're average. These are all statistics, but in 2017, your average realtor made $39,000 a year. Who gets excited about that number? Who wants to be average? No one? We see that that's about half the median income of Connecticut in general. The median income is $73,000 a year. And that was down from $42,000 a year. I searched the internet trying to get the new statistics of what the average realtor is this year, but they're not out yet from last year. I don't know if NAR is getting lazy because of COVID or something like that, but these are all sourced from the National Association of Realtors. But like I was saying is most people get into sales or get into real estate or insurance sales or mortgage sales or get into their own business because they want 1 or 3 of reasons. They want financial freedom. They want freedom of schedule. They want to be able to pick when and where they work and who they work with. And they have the heart of a servant and they want to give to other people. Now, this is the same thing for sales. If you are in a sales role and maybe you don't own your own company, top producers get to pick their own schedule. Top producers get to earn their own income. Top producers get to pick who they work with and who they don't work with. That's why it's important, exceptionally important, to be a great salesperson, to be an outstanding salesperson. Most people don't think this way. You know, they think that they don't think that they're a salesperson. A lot of people enter into the real estate industry, the mortgage industry, the insurance industry, the attorneys, and they think that they're in real estate. They think that they're in law. They think that they're an inspector. They think that they're mortgage. They think that they're insurance, but they're actually in a sales role. And what I mean by that is, I remember I was mentoring this attorney who's actually part of our your professional network and a presenter here at the board. And I remember talking to him in his first year because he was a probate attorney. He wanted to switch over to being a closing attorney for real estate. And he saw me selling a fair amount in my first year. And we would sit down together and we would meet once a week. And he asked me, well, how can I solicit more real estate agents to do more business? And I asked him quite simply, I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I'm an attorney. I said, no. That's your profession. You know, you're confusing your profession with what you actually do for a living. See, he thought he was an attorney, but first, he's not an attorney. First thing he is he's a salesperson. Because you need revenue in order to drive your business. If you're not creating revenue, you will fail. It takes revenue to drive the bottom line so then you can run your business and afford to be able to scale out through human capital or softwares or anything like that. But if you are not good at sales, you're not going to be able to build a bigger business that's bigger than yourself, where you can go on vacation or where you can hire somebody else, where you can start changing other people's lives, where you can start putting money away and having generational wealth. And then lastly, your profession. We're going to get into this a little more deeply, but I want to prove a point really quickly. So let's take a teacher, for example. My mother's a teacher. over 40 years in the inner city. And when I talk to her, she often defines her role as her profession. She says that I am a teacher. However, my mother's primary role, which I've kind of taught her this, is her job is to educate the children on importance of listening and being obedient. Because every day in that classroom, if she doesn't teach the students to listen, to respect her, to be obedient, and to do their paperwork and do whatever it is she's asking, do you think that she is going to be an effective teacher or not? Let me just say one thing. This is an engaging class. When I teach over at Yellow Brick and other places, one thing I do often say is like, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So if I'm asking you guys to engage, the way you perform in here is definitely what you're going to do out there. So do we think if my mom is not getting the class to engage and to be obedient, to take notes, is she going to be an effective teacher? No. I appreciate it. It was a little more effort. Next time from the diaphragm. So that's her primary purpose every single day. And then after that, she develops the curriculum or the courses that in which they pay attention to. Because it doesn't matter how effective or educational her curriculum is if she cannot get the students to pay attention. Does that make sense? We're kind of just, we're looking at a process right now. And then lastly, her profession is the actual presentation, the test taking, the managing of the paperwork and other procedures inside the classroom, decorating the classroom, things like of that nature. These things are all great and they matter, but they do not matter if she doesn't get people to pay attention. It's the same thing with your business. You are not in the real estate profession. The real estate profession is showing and marketing. Right? It's kind of like just letting people know, like showing houses, performing the act of it. Your business is providing outstanding service and building invaluable relationships. That's the business that you're in. But you are a salesperson first. And we're going to learn that you need to sell yourself. You need to sell your experience. You need to sell the American dream. You need to sell a lifestyle. And you need to also sell how you can help people build wealth through real estate. These are, and among many other things that you can sell. But all I'm saying is, if we don't start looking at our job as a salesperson primarily, and then real estate, then the probability that we will be in real estate for the long term greatly decreases. And that's why the National Association of Realtors says over 75% of realtors do not renew their license after getting it. You have to renew your license every 2 years. When we do this orientation, a lot of times what we do is stand up at the front and say, look to your left, look to your right. 2 of you will not be in the business in 2 years. And you in this seat, that should not discourage you. That should encourage you because you're here today. Because for every one of you that are here today, there's about 3,000 other realtors out there that are not here today, just part of this association alone. So in order to become a great salesperson, we first need to identify what is sales and what is sales not, right? So one thing that we need to understand is that sales is not a bad word. I feel like people in sales get a bad rap as like a sleazy salesman. When you say sales, what is the first profession that comes to mind?
Cars.
It's funny, everyone says the same thing. How many of us have bought a used car? How many of us have bought a used car more than once? So are they necessary? I don't know, Carvana may be saying no, but what I'm saying is that we need to understand that sales is not a bad word. And we're going to learn towards the end of my presentation about how it's not a bad word. But all we need to understand is that sales is just a conversation with an end desired result attached to it. We have conversations, hundreds of them every single day. If you're a great, effective realtor and you're in the business of building relationships, hopefully you're having new conversations every day. We kind of understand that that's what I call top of funnel activity. You're exposing yourself to new people, not physically, verbally, to new people every single day. I get a little inappropriate sometimes. They haven't fired me yet, and they haven't kicked me out of the board yet. So it's a conversation with an end result attached to it, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Most of us, most of you here today are here for an objective, aren't you? What is the objective that you're here for?
To have a conversation with you.
Okay, outstanding. What, anybody else? Why are you here today?
Learn something new.
You're here to learn something new. You're here for an objective. Are you ashamed of that objective? No, exactly. So when you're having a conversation with somebody and you have an objective, you should not be ashamed of that objective unless that objective is wrong. Unless you're harming the other party. Does that kind of make sense? All right, and that's what later we're going to talk about what being a fiduciary is. But sales is a circulation of money. That's all it is. It's a passing back and forth of money or energy, as we're going to come to learn. Now, that's how the economy is made. Because without the circulation of money, we have what's called a stale economy. When we have strong circulation of money, a lot of sales happening, then we have a strong economy. And with a strong economy, many people prosper. So therefore, the more sales that you interact with and you encourage and refer out sales to other industries, you are help contributing many, many people through a ripple effect that you will never even talk to, because you are boosting the economy, because we live on an economic planet. Don't get confused. Don't confuse persuasion with manipulation. So we're going to go through what this is really quickly, because I'm often a very convincing person, and every once in a while I'll hear, wow, you totally manipulated that situation. And there's two, from my viewpoint, there's two totally different ways to look at it. Manipulation is when an influencing party influences the other by twisting facts or distorting the truth. And it's to get their own interest to influence the other party. Now, persuasion is something totally different. You're not manipulating the facts or you're not twisting the truth, but you are influencing the other party to help make a decision. But that decision is what's best for them, not just what's best for you. Do we see what the end result here is? Both of them have an end result. And we're going to talk about at the end being a fiduciary. But if you're a great salesperson, you don't need to be ashamed of it, as long as you're doing what's best for your counterpart. Does that kind of make sense? That's why sales is not a bad word. That's why being a great salesperson is actually a beneficial position, not just to yourself, your family, but to your counterpart and to the economy. That makes sense? Do we all agree?
Yeah.
I need some love here. How about you guys out there too? I hope you guys agree. So hope they can hear me. So the best people I know that are at sales, they have not been exposed to the conditions of life yet. Remember when I started talking about life on life terms? Children, they don't have enough experience to have life to beat them down. How many of us know what I'm talking about? Oh, everybody. I'm not the only one with issues up here? Oh, thank God. My son is an extremely good salesperson. And I've noticed 3 common denominators with him. He's not afraid to ask. He's 6 years old. He's 6 years old, and I love him. He's got a better life than I did growing up. So he definitely has not had life beat him up yet. But what I'm saying is that he's not afraid to ask. You know, he asks for the order constantly. And he asks often as well. He doesn't ask once and kind of back up. He's very persistent. Very, very persistent. That's why I encourage you not to just come to this course. Come to at least 6 out of the 8 courses. Give yourself a chance. Give yourself permission to grow in your field. And then he doesn't let outside circumstances defer him or dissuade him from his end result. Meaning if I'm saying no, or if he wants to go to the playground and it's raining out, that does not stop him. He is unreasonable with his requests. And if we want to be successful salespeople, we need to ask often, and we don't blame things like the economy. We don't blame things like we're 21 years old and none of my friends are buying. We don't fall victim to the mind state of, if that was different, then I would be successful. Does that kind of make sense here? Before we even go into sales, we're talking a lot about mindset and understanding how things work. Because mindset is literally everything you do in this life. Because everything you do in this life is energy. You were asking about my beats. This is a spiritual practice for me, right? because I know that everything is energy and everything is a transfer of energy, including sales. That's all sales is to me. It's just a conversation with an end result attached to it. And during that conversation, I am transferring energy back and forth with my counterpart. And I am trying to get an end result that is mutually beneficial. I'm hoping to store or trade my energy for their stored energy. And we're going to go over what I believe stored energy is. But really quickly, I want to touch a little bit more upon energy. Everything is energy. This desk is energy. Everything vibrates at its own frequency. Some things vibrate faster, some things vibrate slower. This desk has molecules that vibrates very slowly. It is not standing still. It just appears to be standing still. We kind of all know that through the laws of science, right? But fire moves, it dances in the wind. Fire is energy as well. The molecules are just vibrating at a much higher frequency. Does that kind of make sense? So your service is a trade for their stored energy. And what I mean by that is their money is stored energy, just like this desk. And what we're trying to do by transferring our emotional energy and our logical energy with them is we're trying to get their parked energy, which is in their bank account, just like the parked energy that is in this desk, and we're trying to release it. I'm not saying go light the desk on fire. What I'm saying is you can pull energy from anything in this world. This morning when I was taking notes for this course, because I haven't taught it in like 3 years, and this is the first time I've looked into slides in 3 years, I sat at my desk and I was pulling the energy out of the desk as I was taking notes, because it was there supporting me and my objective. Does that kind of make sense? This all sounds like hocus pocus stuff, but I promise you, if you subscribe to it, your life will get easier and you will start flowing with life. Yeah, go right ahead. Engagement. Oh my God. What's your name?
Lori.
Lori. Let's give it up for Lori.
I'm new in the area. I moved up to Georgia, and I've opened my own little company called High Gear Team, which is next to the sports complex, the old red barn and all that. That's me. But anyway.
Shameless plug. I love it.
One thing I'm going to say, there's a lot of people. I've done this for 29 years, and I have been asked by my family who lives with me, and I do this every single day for 29 years. They say, "What did you do? What, Mom? Did you work for?" Nobody thinks I work, and I make a good living. and ever since you just make it look so easy, and if you want it, you can do it. Believe in it, and every single day you wake up and you do it. Nobody else is doing this for you, but you, like you said, you give your energy, you get it back. But don't ever let anybody convince you that you don't do anything, because this is a hard job. So those people that don't renew their license, they're losing out, because it has given me, like I said, nobody thinks I work, but I, because I travel and I live a life, and I don't check in at 9 a.m. in somebody's office, except my own up here and sometimes at my desk. And so don't give up, because you do work hard and you keep up with the work.
It sounds like she doesn't work. She has a lifestyle, right?
I'm renovating the farm.
You get what I'm saying. It goes back to what I'm saying, and she's completely right. She has a lifestyle, and she's selling people on that lifestyle. And your company will grow based on that as well, because they will see you and they will emulate you and they will want to be there. They will ask you how to do it. So let's talk about stored energy, right? And how we use stored energy to get people to do things, right? So money is stored energy. Money sits in your bank account and it just kind of sits there and it vibrates very slowly until it starts transacting, right? Now, usually we use money for a service or a product, and that product usually provides a service and makes our life easier. Does that kind of make sense? Usually if you're in sales, you're selling a product or you're selling a service. In mortgage, you're selling both, right? You're selling the type of loan and you're selling your service to get the loan to the closing table. Does that kind of make sense? Now, let's just give an example real quickly. Let's say I'm presenting here today and I haven't eaten breakfast. I'm super hungry. Does anybody want to go 10 minutes down the street, grab me bacon, egg, and cheese or something like that? I'll pay you $50. Boom, $50 right there. Seems like a good deal, right? Seems like a great deal, because I'm using my stored energy to get him up out of his seat to go order my bacon, egg, and cheese, to come back to deliver it to me so I can ingest the bacon and cheese, have more energy to present to you guys. We kind of see the circulation of energy happen. And I use my stored energy to make that happen. Now, let's say he's all for it. He raised his hand really quickly. A couple of you guys are like, I don't know, $50, not enough. Now, if I make $200 an hour, that's a pretty good deal for me too. Because I'm going to sit here, I'm going to present, I'm going to make 200, I'm going to pay you 50. All of a sudden, I made $150. I also didn't need to go get the bacon and cheese, come back. It was a great deal. I'm transferring energy. I'm leveraging human capital. You know, I'm delegating things, right? And most people would say that's a phenomenal deal. I'm happy, he's happy. Until he finds out that I make $1,000 an hour, right? Because if I make $200 an hour, you're like, okay, cool, it's a good deal. And now if I'm not asking you to change your level of service, but to go get me that bacon and cheese, but now you find out I make $1,000 an hour, does that $50 sound as good as it did 2 minutes ago? What? It's okay. And that's okay. We all have our own objective, but I'd say to most people, they're like, nah, I think I can squeeze a little more out of this guy. That's called negotiation right there. That's why you got to come to my next course. We're not going to touch on negotiation, but what I'm going to say to you is that you know that if I'm making $200, my stored energy, it cost me more, 50 to 200, right? But if I'm making $1,000 an hour, for me to flip him a 50, it's less energy out of me. And once he's aware of that, even though his service level of service or time did not change, he's going to want to change his demand. Does that kind of make sense there? Okay, outstanding. So now for some of you may want more. Again, that's negotiation. We're going to teach that in the next course. So paid energy. So what I'm trying to get with it, the point that I'm trying to make with this slide is that when you're in real estate or you're in business or in sales, you are not paid for your time. You are paid for your energy. Getting back to her point, this job is not easy. You are not getting paid to walk your client through a house or negotiate that contract. You're getting paid for all the contracts that you've negotiated in the past. You're getting paid for all the inspections you've sat through in the past. You're getting paid for all the energy in which you've put in. That's why the longer you do it, the more that comes. It's just the universal law of the world. My man Rob wants to say something.
You know, I can't stop talking.
I love it.
So I mean, what I'm also getting from that last slide is the fact that sales and perception, right? Because you see, you think $50 is a good take on that, and then you find out that you make $1,000 an hour. Now you perceive that a little bit differently. So
it's so true. Everything's perception. Rob is on my team, and I often say, we are the sum of the perception of our experiences. You've had experience up to here. We were talking about my 6-year-old. He has a lot less experience than us. He has a lot less perception than us. That's why his world is not tainted as much. And we're talking about energy and mindset and things like that. We are the sum of the perception of our experience. So yes, you're 100% right. Everything's perception. That's why bad things can happen to people, and some people that elevates them, and some people it burns their life to the ground. Now, that being said, I'm going to circle back around. It's a sales process called looping to convince you and just beat it into the ground. If that is true, do we think it's important to be around other people that have life on life's terms and use it to elevate themselves? Raise your hand if that's a yes. Oh my God, welcome to the RAMP program. That one wasn't that good. That one better, all right? I guess I make fun of myself. That's a hit. All right, let's do it. So there's like rule number 1 in sales. If you are not sold, you are not going to sell. Now, what do I mean by that? If you're not sold, you're not going to have the courage to ask for the order. Making money takes courage. Asking people for money takes courage. You would not believe how many salespeople will sit, build rapport with people, get them to like them, and they never even ask for the order. And what I mean by asking for the order is they ask for the sale. If you are not sold, you will not have the why it takes to have the persistence. Remember, we're going back to the children slide. They ask often. At my brokerage, we have a saying, the fortune is in the, we can see who works with me, I should say. right? The fortune is in the follow-up. In order to follow up effectively, you need to have persistence. But if you are not sold on your service or your product, do you think that you'll have the courage to ask and the persistence to follow up? Yes or no? No, exactly. So, and then sales takes persuasion. If you don't have the passion or the belief to be unreasonable, then you won't be persuasive. So if you are not sold on what you're doing, you will not be a great salesperson. Therefore, it goes back to what we're going to close in is the ethics of sales. You always got to follow your moral compass. You got to do what you believe is right. And sometimes talking your clients out of sales is the right thing. Sometimes firing clients is the right thing. Sometimes referring them to a better party where they would have a better transfer of energy is the right thing. We're talking about mindset and perception. You need to have the mindset of abundance because sometimes you got to let things go in order to have more come into it. History. So what I wanted to say actually on this slide is that, you know, to have courage, there's an old saying that says history favors the bold. So does financial income, like financial wealth. It favors those that are bold and have courage. The fortune is in the follow-up. We've already gone over that. And sales is about attraction and not promotion. And that's about the persuasion, right? If you're putting off that energy, you believe what you're doing, you believe what you're selling, and you will attract more sales. So when you're having that conversation with the end result attached to it, your primary purpose is to increase your counterpart's level of certainty in what it is you're trying to do, what product you're trying to sell them, or what service you're trying to sell them. Do we kind of understand that, right? So what I'm saying that is you're trying to emotionally get them invested and logically get them invested and be certain that they want to hand their transferred energy, their stored energy, and transfer it over to you for your service or product. Kind of makes sense? Now, that is broken down into three parts. Many people think of sales as one thing, and they call it a sales cycle, and they say, I'm in sales. Well, actually, you're kind of not. And we're going to learn about that later. You are in an open, you are in a sale, and you are in a close. So their sales is broken down into three parts, and we're going to learn that some people are incredibly strong openers, closers not that much. You know? And you don't get paid unless you close. You don't help people unless you close. So the open is an emotional connection. And we're going to learn more about that. We're going to go into the slides. The sales part is about collecting data, and the close is about portraying logic and leveraging the emotion and the logic and the data to give a logical reason why they should hand over their stored energy. But what type of certainty do you need to create in order to be effective at this? We're going to talk about that right now. Most people start by selling their service. I remember when I was new in the industry, I had very low value proposition. Does anybody feel that way when they got into real estate and they're like, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't even own a house. I don't even own an investment property. And I'm about to advise this person on it, right? So, and they're insecure in themselves. And they're trying to sell their level of service. So most of us just say, I'll pick up the phone anytime you call. You call at 1 a.m. and I will pick up. How many of us started in real estate like that? I know I did. That was like my value proposition. I was like, you call at 1 a.m. I'm picking up. And I did. And it was exhausting. You know? But what we need to understand is that I don't believe that this is the way we should sell. I believe that you should sell your support system first, especially if you're new in the business, in any business. If you decide to leave real estate and go to another business, the first thing you sell is your company, your support system, your upline. This is the fact that they are ethical and they are reputable. This is that their branding is big and effective, that they are a strong support system. They mentor you. If I don't have the answers, I can go and get them. Because you are only as good as your support system. Once again, that's why we collect here in a group. That's why you guys have friends. That's why we are communal animals. That's why most of us are not hermits living in a cave. Is anyone here living in a cave? I know some of us have a desire to do that. And sometimes I kind of do that. This morning, kind of felt that way. But you guys changed my vibe. So the next thing is you want to create certainty as you as an individual. Now that's different than your service. What you want to talk about is your belief systems and why you do what you do. The fact that you're an ethical and passionate person. The fact that you'll be there as an individual. That you care more about what their needs and benefits are than you do your commission. That's you as an individual. And then the last thing you sell is your level of service. And that's what sets you apart from the other real estate agents. The fact that I have effective marketing and leverage technology, the fact that I have administrative assistants, the fact that I have stronger relationships than more than 90% of other real estate agents out there. The fact that I know pretty much everybody that's an affiliate in this industry, and my relationships extend your sale as a seller or buyer, right? That's a whole nother course about how do we build a value proposition as us as individuals. But the whole point of this slide is when you are going out there, especially if you are new, leverage your company or your support system, whether that's your team or your entire entity. Then talk about yourself, you personally, and then you go into the level of service that you're going to give. Because when you're new, your level of service just isn't there. So why not sell the things that truly matter? And this is especially important when you enter into any industry when you're new, because it's an easy way to break into industry and create grounds. So in order to take people through a sales cycle and increase their level of certainty, you need to know what your objectives are. Now, what I mean by this is you need to know where you're taking the prospect next. I think a lot of people just, again, generalize the sales process. And when they get into real estate, you ask them, how do you know you're successful in real estate? I'm going to ask you. You look like you got a great answer.
By how many clients?
How many clients, right? And how many clients you what? Serve. And how do you know you serve them well?
Your referrals.
Oh, geez. I feel like she's like heard me talking for a little bit, but a lot of people say, hey, I'm successful in real estate because I thought I come in the sale. I got to the closing table. I'm successful in insurance because I got the binder locked in and it's over at the mortgage company. I'm successful in mortgage because I have funded the loan, right? But no, there's many, many more steps than that. And it's called what I call marginal gains, right? And most people miss the end result, which you did not miss, and we're going to go through in a second. So most people think that they skip over or they insignificantly measure the little tiny objections in between first contact and the closing. So we'll talk about what is the end result, where are you going next, and what is your call to action, okay? So first and foremost, I'd say the furthest you could probably be from a sale is some type of marketing. Right here it says social media, but it could also be email marketing, it could be text marketing, because these are very passive marketing. We haven't entered in any type of engagement yet. They're basically just watching you, and they're watching you a lot more than they are before they reach out. For example, I post a ton on social media, okay? Not as much as I know some people, but I post enough. And I know I have gained business off social media and people have watched me for years, never liked, commented, or anything like that, but they were in my sales cycle. But once they started commenting, or once they're in my DM, or once they send me an email, I know my next objective. And it's not to get them to the closing table. It's a marginal gain. I just want to get them on the phone. That's my objective right there. I know I'm moving forward with the sales cycle and I'm increasing their level of certainty because they're no longer just viewing me. They're now willing to engage with me. They may not be willing to meet me in person, but they're willing to converse over the phone or maybe text message. They'll bring it from the DM on Instagram to giving me their phone number. Does that kind of make sense? So we have inched towards a more intimate relationship. The next thing when I'm on phone is I want to get them in person. So what does in person look like? This is my first engagement with them with a two-way transfer of energy, not on the phone. This is where we can really start to feel each other's vibes. This can be a coffee meetup. This can be a buyer's consultation. It can be anything. I can meet them at an event. I can meet them at an outing, whatever it is. My objective is, once I'm on the phone with them, is try to schedule an in-person meetup. The in-person meetup isn't always showing houses or sitting at a listing presentation. Sometimes it's before that. So I understand I just got to get them in person. And sometimes in person is at the house, especially if you're taking like online leads or anything like that. It may skip a step a little bit, but you want to treat it the same way. Now, when you're in the house, you're either presenting at a listing presentation if you're in real estate, or you are showing the house as a buyer representation. Does that kind of make sense? Or you're giving a buyer's consultation if it's an elongated sale, but it's way too in-depth and I got too many slides. So once I get them in the house, what's my next logical thing? It says it on the screen. Come on, someone. Contract. I'm trying to get them into contract, right? A buyer representation agreement, buyer broker agreement. I'm trying to get them into a listing representation agreement, or I'm trying to get them into a purchase and sales agreement. Does that kind of make sense there, right? Because you can't have a closing without a contract. So that's my next objective. A lot of people meet them in the house and they're already thinking about their commission at the closing table. No, you want to get them into contract. And then once you have in contract, that's when your level of service continues from when you met them at the house or met them in person, or when you were talking to them on the phone, or when you were presenting yourself online. It continues because just because you go to contract, does that always, how many of us have gone to contract every single time and gone to the closing table? Oh, I'm the only one? Oh, wait, I'm lying right now because I'm not the only one. That's called the fall off ratio. Again, much more in depth, measuring your level of success. But once you go to contract, you go to the closing table, right? Now, this right here, this is where most people measure their barometer of success, and this is where their sales cycle stops. Does that kind of make sense? How many of us, and it's okay to be honest, how many of your sales cycle stops at the closing table? I know for a little bit, like mine did, for the first couple of weeks when I was working in the fitness industry, I locked them into a membership, it stopped. And then I realized I can get them in personal training, or I can get reviews, because reviews are now third-party verification that I can use to create value, to endorse my level of service, to attract more clients. Does that kind of make sense?
You'll find that there's some clients you don't want, you can't wait for that closing and you don't want.
You don't want the review. Yeah, that's another story too. You can tell she's been doing this for a while. Even though like length of time in this industry doesn't, in my experience, doesn't mean anything, because some people do this for 20 years and they sell no transactions, right? Some people do this for 2 years and they sell a lot. You can tell that she's obviously sold real estate. Because she's completely right. Some of these people, you do want to skip this step and you don't want to review, right? Some people, you don't even want the next one. Do we all know what the next one is? Come on. Referrals. This is where your sales cycle stops, because it's where the new sales cycle starts. Every single time you are selling a client, you should be selling them with such outstanding service that your end result is to try to get a referral from them, not get them to the closing table. Because once again, sometimes it's best for them not to get to the closing table. Maybe their economic situation changes, but that doesn't stop them as a referral partner. And sometimes it's such a toxic relationship, you don't want that referral.
They don't have to close to refer.
I love you. So did we all hear what she said? Out there in Zoom land, you don't have to get to the closing table in order to get a referral. Do I not talk about that a lot?
Yeah.
At what point is it appropriate to start asking for referrals? Anytime you see their teeth. They are not wolves, they are not dogs. If you see their teeth, you don't run. You walk towards them and you ask for a referral because they are happy. So it's a great time to try to start a new sales cycle with another person. Now, Brandon, how do I ask for a referral? No. Do I say, how do I phrase it?
One person that I can help.
He said, one person. Do you know one person that I can help buy, sell, or invest in real estate? Do you know one person that I can increase their coverage and reduce their premiums? Do you know one person that I can help lower their mortgage payment or by lengthening the term of their loan or lowering their interest rate or whatever profession you're in? One person, because we're going to learn about isolation of the mind later and how effective it is in a sales process. Thank you, Brandon, for that. So understanding the sales cycle part 2. So we were talking about how there's a difference between the opening, there's a difference between the selling, and there's a difference between the closing. Okay, we're breaking down the sales cycle. So we now know our micro objective. Let's talk about let's go deeper into like the actual sales arch, right? So the first thing that you want to do in your opening is you're doing a lot of speaking in your opening. Because what you're trying to do is provoke emotion. That's what we're gonna learn is how you build rapport. That's how you have a strong opening, okay? And an opening doesn't necessarily need to be that long. We're gonna learn how actually quick it really is. Then, number two, when you're selling, it's questions and active listening. We're gonna go very deep into this. I often say, the quality of your life is directly correlated with the quality of questions that you ask yourself and other people. You want a better life, ask yourself better questions. You want a better life, ask other people better questions. Be very intentional with the questions in which you ask. And then the third part, asking for the order and then handling objections. This usually takes logic, right? We hear objections, we overcome the objections, and then we usually ask again. This is a process called looping, where we continue our objection handling. So, rule number two of our sales arch. We're never going to skip a step. Whether it's our micro, like kind of going down the process, you don't want to skip steps because that's how you just get out of the sales process. Or you can't identify exactly where your prospect is in it. And once you can't identify where your prospect is in it, how do you bring them to the next step? That kind of makes sense. For example, my son is 6 years old. I'm teaching him baseball right now. It's a very special moment. My father wasn't around. He did not teach me baseball. So I'm very engaged with this and I'm very intentional with this practice. It's only been about 2 weeks and we're currently learning how to bat. So what do I teach my son? Walk up to the plate. Step one, measure yourself from the plate. Step two, your feet go below your shoulders. Step three, bend your knees. Step four, bat on your shoulder. Step five, pull up your elbow and lift up the bat. Step six, look at the pitcher and never take your eye off the ball. Step seven, watch the ball and hit one stitch on that ball. Step eight, as soon as you hear that click, you run like hell to first base. It doesn't matter if it goes down, up, left, right, you run. I'm teaching him to control his controllable variables. If it's a good pitch or bad pitch, does he have control over that? No. If it goes fair or foul, does he kind of have control over that? Or how about this? If it goes in the outfield, does he have control over if the outfielder catches the ball or drops the ball? He does not have control over that. But he has control over everything up to the pitch, and once it's hit, how fast he runs the first. Does that kind of make sense? So, therefore, we don't want to skip steps. We want to identify what we can control, not skip a step, and just kind of keep the ball moving forward, or keep the prospect moving forward. Okay? So, I'm like so dehydrated right now. I went out to this place called Latina Cantina last night. I got asked to be a best man in my best friend's wedding. I've known him since kindergarten. It's an amazing, it's like, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. That's literally my response. He's like, will you be my best man? I said, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. But yes, all that salt, I am very dehydrated. Jay's a beast right now. This thing's been in real estate for like 3 months. How much volume have you put? 5.4 million. Damn, let's go, Jay. Right. You know what he does? He sticks around winners. He asks questions. That's the way it goes, right? So, we're going to talk about the opening objective right here. So the purpose of a strong opening is to build rapport and to allow the prospect to be comfortable to enter into the sales cycle. Because we learned that the second part of the sales cycle is asking questions. Now, if you are uncomfortable, are you unlikely to answer questions or likely to answer questions? Just say it with passion, baby. You are unlikely to answer the questions. So therefore, our opening needs to be strong and we need to build rapport very quickly, right? And this starts with they're asking themselves some questions. You need to be clear that you are confident in your practice, right? Because they're not going to trust you if you are not confident in what you do. Does that kind of make sense? Even if you are new, once again, sticking around your brokerage and other winners, gaining confidence through that, gaining confidence through other people's experiences rather than your own experience, is that going to increase or decrease your level of confidence? Increase your level of confidence. So if you don't have experience in your industry yet, get around people that do. And maybe you could be like Jay and close 5.4 million in 2 months. Because you're learning from other people's experiences. Because we are the sum of the perception of our own experiences. And a smart man learns from his experiences, but a wise man learns from other people's experiences. So be wise and don't be smart. This happening, you're going to establish whether you're somebody worth listening to. Remember before when I was talking about myself and like my transition into real estate, I usually do that a lot more passionate, but I've gotten away from it a little bit because it sounds a little pompous and I don't really like it. But all I was trying to do is establish myself as an authority figure, somebody worth listening to at the front of the room. Why is this guy at the front of the room? I mean, now real estate is giving me so much gray hair. I don't look like a 20 anymore, but I know when I started 7 years ago and I was doing these presentations and I had the long hair and a broken leg, I remember people saying, hey, are you like 21 right now? But again, I didn't let their opinions depict and stop me from doing what it is that I was going to do. So, you want to prove that you're well educated in what it is that you are selling, the product or service, and you're worth listening to. And you want to give up, and you want to be passionate about what you do. You want to prove to them that you're not going to give up on their goals or your goals. This is what a strong opening is. When you can get these 3 things across to them, they are more likely to start answering your questions and start telling you more things, which is going to, in return, allow you to help them. We're going to continue with the opening. So how do we do this? How do we have a strong opening? Now, there's different openings for different settings, and I'm going to break it down into 2 quick buckets. There's a direct opening and there is an indirect opening. And I'm going to talk a little more about this as we go on, direct sales and indirect sales. So direct opening is more of a pitch. And in this pitch, you're playing offense. A lot of the direct opening is like circle prospecting. It's calling expireds. It's maybe calling old internet leads, things like that, where you are outbound reaching people and they're not expecting for your call. You're playing the offense. And a lot of that sentence starts with like, hey, my name is Alan Stewart. Hey, Mr. Blackwood, how are you today? My name is Alan Stewart Jr. with Yellow Brick Real Estate. The purpose of the call is I have a listing down the street, and statistics prove that when I have a listing down the street and sell it, statistically that I can sell other listings in the neighborhood for more. Do you know one other person that's looking to buy, sell, or invest in your neighborhood that you can be in contact with? Now that's a very short opening, and I'm asking for the order very quickly. Usually it doesn't look like that, but I'm kind of just showing that you need to be aggressive when you're doing things like that. Now, most people are not comfortable with that type of sale. How many people are comfortable with that? It's a very cold sale. It's something that I had to get very good at when I was working at LA Fitness, because the sales cycle is so small. You have to create tremendous urgency and you have to close right then and there. That's why car salesmen have a bad rap, because they know statistically, if you get up out of that desk, are you coming back to buy that car? No, it's like a 98% chance you will not come back. It's the same thing in the fitness industry and a lot of those, what we call condensed sales cycles, those small sales cycles. Now, most realtors fall more in this indirect passive sales cycle, because our sales cycle is an elongated sales cycle. On average, it's around 120 days, at least it used to be. COVID may have changed that a little bit because we're more in a seller's market. And on average, you have about 160 to 175 touch points in order to commence your sales cycle. So this is a little bit different. This is more on the defense. This is like when you're at a networking event or a family event, or you're here and people are asking you, what do you do for a living? Right? And then we start to explain. Most people just say, what do you say when somebody asks you what you do for a living? Yes, that's what most people say. I'm in real estate, And he's talking about his profession. He's not talking about. So I usually go with what's called an EOS. It's called an explanation of services, right? And rather than telling them what I do for a living, I usually say, Carlos, before I tell you what I do for a living, let me tell you what I believe and why I do it. Because once I start with that, yes, it's a little theatrical, but would I rather be theatrical and be remembered? Or would I just rather be another face in the crowd and say I'm in real estate? I know my answer because I've been doing it for years and I kind of set myself apart. Because when you're new in this industry, your number one objective is to not be a secret agent. You want to let people know that you are a real estate agent. And right now, there are a lot of real estate agents funneling into this industry. You can go outside for your shoe, you hit 2 of them in the head. It doesn't mean that they're selling real estate, it means they have a license. You need to set yourself apart from that, right? And an explanation of service is really good to do that. And you could say something like, you know, can I tell you a little bit of what I believe and why I do it? What I believe is in the American dream, that everybody deserves their own personal oasis. And they find that oasis in their own home. That's why I help people buy and sell real estate. I've done it for over 100 people. It's allowed me to do things and set myself apart and win awards like Realtor of the Year and be featured in Real Trends magazine. I do it with passion. I do it for my clients. I don't do it for me. Based on my belief system, Doug, do you know one person that would like to buy, sell, or invest in real estate with me? Even if he doesn't know, is that more, I know it's theatrical, but is it more powerful than I'm in real estate? Right? And you don't have to use that exact EOS. You can create your own EOS, explanation of services. And it just looks like this. This is what I believe. This is why I believe it. And depending on how much time you have with that person, you can elaborate on it. You know, and you can talk about how many people you've done it for, conveying your experience with them, and then how can I help you? You ask for the order at the end of it. Does that kind of make sense? We're turning this indirect sale into a micro close right there, or we're asking for a referral or for business right away within the first conversation. And if they don't know somebody or they are not into it, you continue on with the conversation. Then what is my next objective based on the micro objectives? I'm trying to get their contact information so I can follow up, because the fortune is in the follow-up. I'm trying to throw them in my sphere of influence, my database, and I'm trying to stay in touch with them, right? If I'm vibing with them, if my frequency is good with them, if I want to continue to communicate with them. Because again, I got into real estate, I got into sales to choose who I work with, to have freedom of schedule, of choices, and financial freedom. How many people do I want to help? And how many people do I want to serve? You know what time it is? How many people are bored as shit right now? I mean, all your posture is pretty good, so I think I'm doing an all right job. You know, it's like when you start getting all those and stuff. So do we have any questions about this slide before I move on to the next one? And that includes like the Zoom world too, if you have any questions.
The defensive, go back over that. Okay.
What right here?
And indirect.
So indirect, that was when I was talking about my explanation of services. This is when you're on the defense, when people are coming to you saying what it is that you do for a living. Or maybe they don't ask you, and I teach another acronym called FORD, right? How you work your business into everyday conversations. But this is usually when you're just at networking events with it, like this. And you're talking about in a passive way what it is you do. But instead of talking about what it is you do, talk about what you believe. Because once again, you're identifying yourself as an individual, right? Talk about who it is you work for, what it is they believe, how they support you. Talk about who you've done it for and why you do it, right? Sometimes if it's an intimate conversation, it's a long conversation, it's somebody that I want to build strong rapport with, I talk about why I'm in real estate and how that personal ace is super special to me. I want to make sure that when children come home, they know they're at a safe place. I want to make sure when they come home, they know that the lights will be on and the heat will be on. So I make sure that my clients can afford the house and that they're put in touch with reputable loan officers that are not going to put them in products that are going to make them bankrupt in a couple of years. And when I talk about these things and talk about with passion, do you believe me or do you not believe me? And even if you're not buying or selling, is that going to stick with you? Are you going to go tell everybody or go out of your way to try to find me clients? You will. It's proven. I got a year with 140 sales that proves it. No. Oh no, the side. All right, awesome. Let's talk about language and communication. So you can notice in the bottom left corner that we're still in the open stage right now. We're talking about the opening. It doesn't mean that the opening is a very long process. It just means a lot goes into it. You got to take a lot of factors into it to have a strong emotion, a strong opening, because the point of the open is to elevate their emotion, elevate their frequency, make sure that they know that you are passionate, you are logical, and you will not quit on them if they already do business with you, right? So when we're talking, and the best way to do that is through language and communication. Now, the statistics vary, but across the board, it's basically 45, 45, 10. It's less about what you say and it's more about how you say it. Okay? And what I mean by that is how you say things depicts whether you align with another person's frequency. Because you can have alternative thoughts. Again, we're talking about negotiations, right? Where your viewpoint is one way and my viewpoint is another way. So the words don't matter that much because the words will clash because we have different viewpoints. But if I say it in a certain way, you're more likely to come over the bridge and say, you know what, I align myself with you. I'm feeling what you're saying. I may be open to changing my viewpoint. Right? That transfer of energy. And it says 45% tone, 45% body language, and 10% words. And that's actually what it is that you're saying. Right? So if your frequencies don't align, you can't guide them through the process. You're not going to get them to the next step. You're not going to get them answering questions or giving their phone number or meeting you in person or committing to a contract or committing to the inspection addendums to go closer to closing or overpaying for an appraisal or reducing the price for an appraisal, an underappraised house, right? Do we see how sales is like every little facet of the real estate transaction? It's not just persuading people to do business with me. I'm selling the other realtor. I'm selling the loan officer to give credits. I'm selling the inspector. I'm selling the appraiser. It's everywhere. So so how do you know if they're going to feel you? But one important thing that I do want to add is 45% tone, 45% body, 10% of exactly what you're saying. If they're on the phone, they cannot see your body. So therefore, we're going to learn a lot about tonality here today because we think in pictures and we imagine things. And if you're on the phone and you're persuasive on the phone, they can almost picture who you are. For example, how many of us have talked to somebody on the phone and you imagined them one way? And then you show up, you thought they were tall, dark, and handsome. And you show up and they are short, fat, and bald. Right? It's because of their tone, it's their swagger, it's the way that they're putting themselves out there. Does that kind of make sense? Right? So that's why we're going to dive deep into tonality, right? Before we do, we're going to talk about mirror and matcher. So in order to be effective mirror and matcher, and we're going to go over what exactly this is, you need to be an incredibly observant person. I pride myself on being very observant. People who know me know I like to sit in a restaurant and face the door because I want to know what's going on. And it's not just because of scarcity. I think things are going to go wrong. I just like to watch people. Growing up, I was a window watcher. Like I love to sit at the window and watch the cars go by and squirrels and kids and everything. I like to see people's mannerisms. I like to see the posture in which they hold themselves because I believe with that 45% of their body language, I can read a lot about a person. I believe that they can be saying one thing, but they mean a totally different thing. I believe that a lot of people don't even know what they want, including myself in some areas of my life. Can anyone relate? Oh, I'm not the only confused one. Oh, Alex jumped up. Oh my God. But what I'm saying though is if we just pay close attention to some body language, right? We can see that this individual right here, what's up with his body? Very closed body language. If someone has closed body language, do we think that they're going to be receptive to what you're saying? No, right? Unless they're what? They're cold? Yeah, that's true. So, but what I'm saying though is if my body language is like this, I'm closed off to new ideas. I'm closed off to what it is that you're telling me. I've pretty much made up my mind, or at least I think I am, right? Now, number one is I'm just being observant of that really quickly. I'm going to talk about what to do with that in a second, but I want to make sure that I'm paying attention to that. And then the next thing is the verbal, right? We want to talk in terms of other people. And in order to do that, we need to identify the way that they are speaking. Now, I have identified that people speak in three basic terms. People speak in the way they feel, the way that they think, and the way that they see. You all speak majority in one of these three ways when you're talking about an opinion about something. Pay more attention to when you're speaking, which of these three you're using. Think back when you're showing a client a house. and they walk into the grand room, are they not saying, I feel like this house would be a good fit? Are they not saying, I could see my family here? Are they not saying, I think this is a good purchase? Right? When you're talking with your counterpart, pay attention to the terms in which they use. Because when you're talking to them and you're identifying the verbiage they use and the body language that they use, when you start to mirror that, you can then go on to what's called pacing and leading, and you can start influencing the other person. Okay? Also, when it comes to pacing and leading, you're going to want to pay attention, not just to what they say, the terms in which they talk, you're going to want to pay attention to the pace in which they speak and to the tone in which they speak as well. You need to be observant to these things, because if you want to start to guide them towards your end result that you know is mutually beneficial, you need to meet their frequency exactly where they are. And without being observant to it, can you meet that or can you not meet that? How many times have you guys been in a room, you know, everybody's vibing, maybe you're out to dinner, you're vibing so much you don't even realize it. You guys are out to dinner and you're reaching for your water at the same time, right? Or you're laughing at the same time. The level of laughter is at the same, and you know at the end of the night, you're like, that was a great night. Oh my God, I don't even know what magic was in the air. Magic was in the air, right? Your frequency is matched with that other individual. How many times have you been doing that and the waiter comes over, totally fucks up your body, right? You know, he's just like, he just brings a whole new level of intensity, whether it's just like, hey, you guys want dessert, or hey guys, I got this tremendous dessert. And you guys are just more like this. Has that ever happened to you too? Or someone walks in a room, you're just like, I got about it. You know, that's all frequency right there. But you can't even identify. That's your body telling you something's off. But you can feel that, but you can also logically kind of observe it as well. So by being observant of the body language and the way that people are talking to you, you can start to verbally mirror and match people. And once you can start to mirror and match people, you can start to pace and lead them. So for example, if an individual has his body language closed like this, I've came into this a lot with like my client's uncle who's a contractor, or if I'm selling a house to a daughter and the father comes, or the parents come, or something like that, because they are the authoritative figure and they don't want to give up authority. And I need to identify that, and I need to overcome, and I need to pace and lead them to the next step in the sales process. And right then and there, the daughter may be committed to the house, but unless she gets the influencer's approval, a heavy influencer who may or may not be an actual, not just an influencer, but a decision maker, because they have more rapport, because they've spent more time together, then I need to build that rapport. So a lot of times their body language will look like this. It will like, I know. So their body language will look like this, or their hands will be in their pocket, right? So what I'll do is I'll observe it and I'll just match it real quick. I'll put my hands in my pocket, or I'll cross my arms real quick. And then I'll pay attention to their tone, the way they're talking, and the pace in which they're talking, and I'll start to match that as well. And then what I'll start to do is start to pace and lead them and slowly let open my body. And only let open one side, or maybe only take one hand out of it. And I won't do a large gesture, I'll just do a small, low gesture. And I'll start talking to the individual and proving my company's value proposition, how passionate I am as an individual, and my level of service. And I'll slowly start to notice that individual is either buying into it. I'm pacing and leading this individual where one of his arms comes out. And as soon as his other arm comes out, the other arm starts to come out. And before you know it, I'm wide open. And I've got this guy wide open. And before I know it, he wants me to marry his daughter. It's not a true story, but I just figure I'd get a laugh, provoke some energy into them. But you kind of get what I'm saying. Like, I'm pacing and leading the conversation by paying attention to those three variables, which is the physical, the tone, what's actually four, the tone, the volume, and the actual language that they're using. So for example, with the language, it's the same thing. If I start hearing them and I say, hey, what do you think about this house? Or what's your perception on this house? Or your opinion on this house? If I hear them saying, hey, I feel like this would be a great house for me and my dog. So now I've switched it up. I start not only meeting them at their level of volume and at their pace, I start talking in terms of feeling. Because that's how they identify And although I already know, I'm a thinker. I think that this is a great purchase. But if I'm talking thinking to a person that talks feelings, do you think I'm breaking rapport or I'm building? What am I doing? I'm breaking rapport, right? It may not be a massive break of rapport, but I'm slowly breaking rapport with this individual. And I'll take every single piece of rapport that I can get. You're doing good. So, in order to pace and lead as well, I got to pay attention to their tonality, right? Or most people actually don't use a lot of tonality, or they don't use it intentionally. But I know that I use tonality. And I'm going to go over 4 basic types of tones. There are more than these. We don't have a ton of time to go into an abundant amount of them, but these are like primary types of tone that we use. In order to pace and lead effectively, you must control the conversation. You do this through inflections in your tone, and you start with your physical, and then you, in order to inflect your tone. And I'm going to go over what that means. So, for example, the secret. This is a secret tone. Now, a lot of people think if you want attention, what do? You get loud and you get obnoxious, right? And we all know those people. Some of us are married to them. And it's just like, it's good sometimes, but like all the time. I have found that if I want attention, the best way for me to do it is to start to lower. I create scarcity through lowering my voice. And the way that I lower my voice and make people listen is I first start with my body language, move a muscle, change a thought, right? And you want to start with your physicality before you start with your verbal and the way that you feel. Your physical state is what sends out the frequency. So what I'll do, even if I'm on the phone, I'll start to do these things. I'll look left, I'll look right. No one's in the room. I don't really care. I'll lean in. When I lean in, what do you think most people do? They lean in. They'll match me. And I'm just like, you know, you feel this guy. Give it. Or whatever it is that I'm saying. Whatever, again, it's 10% of the work. It's how I'm saying it to them. Does that kind of make sense? Right? So I throw the physical first. Right? And that's the secret. That's the secret tone right there. And that's how I gain attention. I'll give them one quick example really quickly. I had you said TV, said Tom Vanacore. He started with us. He was in our York Professional Network for many, many years. I got to hand out an award to him at one of the Chamber of Commerce's. And I will never forget this night. The awards, they did kind of backwards. They did them towards the end of the night. And there was liquor being served. So what do we know about liquor? Yeah, that drunk husband gets extra obnoxious, right? So, you know, the room was really loud and the VJ couldn't really control the room, you know? And I remember every time someone went up to speak, they would just get drowned out by the crowd. And it was really special to me because I was like, kind of like mentoring Tom and like, we were buddies, but like, I was always just kind of giving him advice. So to give him this award was super special because I don't just want to win. I want to see my people win. So I went up there and I started to speak. And what happens? There's an uproar. You know, the drunk cousin, everybody's talking. What they're talking about is definitely more important than me giving the award to Tom, obviously, because people are selfish, self-centered, and self-seeking. But that's a totally different conversation. But so what did I do? Everybody else tried to raise their voice to match the frequency of the room. And then it would cause an elevation of the tone. All I did was pull the microphone down and just sat there in silence. And within a couple of seconds, the whole room went silent. Because it was like I had a secret, you know, I just lowered my tone. I said, I'll wait then. And I just went like this. The room went down. I went to give my introduction to Tom. He gave a stellar speech. And then after his speech, what do you think the room went back to? Back to the uproar. And it's all because of the secret. You know, that is the secret of scarcity. Okay. The next one is the reasonable man tone. So what the reasonable man tone is, you're going to drop your chin, you're going to lift your shoulders. It's kind of like this, like, you know, and what the reasonable man tone is, you're insinuating through tone, like, makes sense, right? I'm reasonable. right? And I do these things because that's how you can get your tone, kind of, and again, it's less about what it is that you're saying, but you can just kind of be like, listen, it's a seller's market right now. And if you want this house, 30, 40,000 is probably where you're at overestimating. I'm not saying that's reasonable. I'm just insinuating because it's more convincing and I'm not telling them to do that because it's the wrong thing to do because that's literally where it has to be. And I'm just saying, hey, this is because most people will be like, that's friggin' absurd. Why would I do that? Right? But I insinuate through my tone, it's reasonable. The next one is bottled enthusiasm, right? So this one is when your shoulders go slightly higher than the reasonable man and this goes up, your eyebrows go up, right? Don't worry, ladies, shoot some Botox, it won't affect your forehead. All right, that joke was not good either. I don't know. I know people are scared of writing. I got time. So, but what I'm saying is that what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to. What you're going to want to do is you want to lift your shoulders actually and raise your, and it's almost like when you can leave this house, you can feel the intensity without me actually getting loud because the shoulders are up, this is up, and I do this when I'm on the phone too because they can almost see my face and hear exactly what it is that I'm trying to say. Like I'll use things like this at like if I'm at an open house with a client, and I'm like, this house. It implies urgency because I know it fits all of their needs. They need to move. We have missed out on tons of houses, or maybe their last realtors missed out on tons of houses because we couldn't get them to commit, or whatever it is to get them to the next stage, right? But that is the bottled enthusiasm. And then the last one is the authoritative figure, and we all know this one if you have children. And this is just like a downswing, right? And you can downswing with your head or you can downswing with your hand. I talk a lot with my hands, and I have go to your room up there. If you say something like, go to your room, or go to your room, does that sound totally different? It's the same sentence, isn't it? Same words, different end result. Because if I'm saying it in an inquisitive tone, hey, go to your room. Do you think that I'm coming across as an authority? No, this is time where you're basically advising the person. Now, it doesn't mean to be, there are different types of downswings. It can be an abrupt downswing, or it can be like, you're gonna have to come in 30,000 over us, because they just haven't been listening to you. They have been unreasonable to your reasonable man tone. Does that kind of make sense? Awesome. Selling, we already know that it is a transfer of energy that increases your client's potential, increases your potential client's certainty, okay? They are asking themselves throughout the, without a strong opening, you're not going to answer these three questions for them. Build enough rapport. They're asking themselves, do they like you? Do they trust you? And do they see value in their proposition, right? So they're not going to give you answers in the selling process because we're going to learn questions is the selling process. Selling is not telling. Selling is actually active listening. So, but without answering these three questions, you're not going to get to the final step. And they're not going to have, they need to have certainty of an answer in this life. They know you, they like you, they trust you, they see value. So how do we do this? This is very, very basic stuff, but it's always great to have a refresher on it. So this is what's called a needs, features, and benefits sales cycle right here. So while they are answering those questions, you are trying to get answers from them. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to establish what their needs are, right? You're trying to establish what their needs are and why those are their needs. The what and the why are truly important. You're trying to establish what features will benefit their needs. See how this is a circle right here? It just kind of goes round and round and round. Once you know exactly what it is that your counterpart needs, then like features would be features in the house, like an in-ground pool, a double, two-car garage, and again, some people think they want one thing. And then how many of us have shown houses to a client? They start off with one search and they buy something totally different. Yeah, because they thought they needed one thing in their mind because the influencers were telling them, you got to do this, you got to get that, or whatever the reason is. And then as they go through the process, they realize that's not actually my needs. I actually need different features to benefit my lifestyle, or those needs are based off of my last lifestyle when I was living in New York. I'm moving to the suburbs because I want to change up my lifestyle. Does that kind of make sense? So your needs are also referred to as pain points in sales. If you've ever heard pain points, what is your pain, right? If you're ever going to recruit agents or anything like that, you also often identify their pain points. What are their needs? What are they not getting, right? Then you talk about the features of what your company does and how it will benefit them to fulfill their needs and probably get past their needs, right? So if you don't know your needs, if you don't know your features, meaning your own value, you won't be able to fulfill any needs. So if you don't know your own value as an individual, if you don't know your own value as a company, if you don't know your own value of service, and if you don't know the houses that you're selling or the products you're selling in mortgage, then you can't talk about the features. And if you can't talk about the features, you can't talk about how it will benefit them. So you really want to know your industry, okay? Your profession. So let's get into selling, baby. How many of us are so excited? At least I got a clap. We're almost done here. We're towards the tail end. We're in selling, right? My favorite part is the close, but we're in selling. So the quality of your life is directly correlated with the quality of questions that you ask yourself and others, right? That's why when I talk about selling, you're listening to understand people. You are not listening to judge or reply to them. You would be astonished if you think about it. How many people converse with you just to reply back to you? If you truly think about it. That's why communication is very poor. People don't actively listen. What they do is they listen just enough so they can kind of rebuttal, right? We all at least know that guy. Some of us are married to him. No, not so funny. The first time I hit a little bit. This time, no. They're married more to obnoxious people, or maybe the crowd's so young. Not a lot of people are married. So what I'm saying is that what you are going to want to do is you're going to ask smart questions that individualize them, and it makes them go into more depth, right? And a lot of these smart questions that I ask are often two very simple questions. What's most important to you in blank? What's most important to you in a real estate agent? What's most important to you in a listing agent? What's most important to you in a brokerage? What's most important to you in a marketing representative? Most important to you in an administrative assistant? What's most important to you in a loan officer? Do we see how we can fill in the blank right there? Personally, what's most important to you in a significant other? What's most important to you in a babysitter? What's most important to you? Ask yourself these questions too. What is most important? Then the follow-up question to go deeper is, why is that most important? Right there, we're identifying what's most important, and the why is the need right there. The what and the why. And you are listening to not respond, but you are listening to confirm that you understand what their needs are. And this is the basis of selling right here. Selling is not telling, it is listening, and it is active listening. And what I mean by active listening is you're going to repeat back to them what is most important to them and why it is most important. So when Doug tells me this is what's most important in a real estate agent, I say, it sounds like what you're saying is communication is most important to you in a real estate agent. Or from what I'm understanding, Mike, transparency is what is most important to you in a real estate agent. Or it looks like, remember, or I feel like what you're saying is what's most important to you is effective marketing and a strong negotiator. And do we hear how my tone kind of swayed down with strong negotiator? Because I'm a fucking authority when it comes to that. Sorry, I swear. My 6-year-old's not here, so. But do we see what we're doing right now? We're identifying, and then I'm repeating back to them. Now, why do I repeat back to my counterpart what it is they just said to me? For two reasons. One, if I misunderstood, it allows them to correct me and it allows me to thoroughly understand. Number two, if I am not misunderstanding, what it's allowing them to do is to understand that I'm actually listening to them. And they matter. Their goals matter, their needs matter, and I'm going to align myself with them because I am a true fiduciary. And then lastly, what you can do if you get people that are long-winded and talk a lot, you never want to interrupt them. Try not to finish other people's sentences. I think most of us are effective communicators or have enough correspondence where we can pretty much project what someone's going to say next. Finishing people's sentences is horrible. It's the quickest way to demean people. And what you want to do is acknowledge the fact that you're listening and allow them to get it all out. And you do that through subtle sounds like, I understand. Just little filler words to let them know that you are listening. On an off day, sometimes I'll just let them go and go and go. If I don't say things like that, they'll be like, hey, are you still there? You know, or are you listening to me? So subtle sounds like that, or repeating the last few words in their sentence. What's most important to me is a fenced-in backyard because I have 3 dogs. I have 3 dogs. You know, I'm just acknowledging to them. And then when I do that, they either continue or they stop. And then I go, if they stop, I go into, so it sounds like what's most important to you is a fenced-in backyard and probably being off a main road, just in case your 3 dogs get out of that fence. Does that sound about right? Boom. Right there, I'm building huge rapport, but I'm also identifying those needs so I can go out and find the feature that will benefit them. And the more I do this, the more likely they are to close and refer me clients. Okay, we're into the closing. So I love the closing. Closing, this is where the courage comes in. Remember what we were saying earlier? Making money takes courage. Starting a business takes courage. Asking for the order takes courage. Based on what you told me. So we'll actually go over a close in a second, but closes to me are a transfer of logic that provokes action to be taken. So what I mean by that is when you're opening, it's usually a transfer of emotion. When you're selling, you're usually receiving information, collecting data. The close is usually leveraging the data and the emotion and inserting logic as to why this is the best available option for your counterpart. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, so this is what helps people decide whether they purchase or not, whatever it is you're selling, whether your children are going to bed or not, and whether you're going on that first date or not. The reason why I put these up here is sales is in every facet of your life. And you are trying to close on something every single day in one area of your life or another. So to be a strong closer is absolutely essential. I just don't want to take away from my future slides, you know? So what we'll talk about is so based on what you told me, this house checks many boxes. And this house checks many boxes. It's got the right location. It's got the good size. Maybe the floor plan's not open. However, it's easier to open up a wall than it is to move a house. Do you think that we can type up a contract and move forward towards inspection? So that's a mini close right there. I'm trying to get someone to commit to typing a contract and not go to the closing table, just to my micro next step. Then what's the next step after you go to contract? Inspection. I'm not saying type up a contract and buy the house because I'm skipping a step. And we talked about not skipping steps earlier. So I'm just talking about, let's just get to the next logical step. Because you still are in the driver's seat as the purchaser and you can still back out, right? And that's called a micro close right there. But in order to have micro close, what do you need to know? Your objectives. You need to know all your micro objectives. You need to take whatever it is that you're selling and you need to break it down into your micro objectives. Whether it's to get them from the email to the phone to a person, into a house, into contract, stay in contract to a closing, get a review, and get a review. There are many closes inside a sales cycle. That's basically what I'm saying. is the close doesn't mean that you commence the sale and get the commission. A close means that you have moved, you have advanced the prospect to the next stage in the sales cycle. So you should be rewarding yourself because you get a bunch of mini micro closes, you will get a bunch of macro closes. Does that kind of make sense? Break it down into simple steps. As I say at the brokerage all the time, kiss your business, keep it super simple. Just get them to the next stage. And for that, in order for you to do this, you need to identify the fact that you are not in it for the commission. The close is for the client, it is not for the commission. You are in it for the referral. And because when you are in it for the referral during the process, you will give such an outstanding level of service that they will have no choice but to want to refer you to other clients. Yeah. In order to be a strong closer, you are going to want to understand the difference between smoke screens and objections. Okay. So in order to be a strong closer, now we talked really quickly about there's an open, there's a sale, and there's a close. Most salespeople are exquisite openers. They can transfer that energy very quickly and build very strong rapport. They can pull questions out of people. Doesn't mean that they're a great active listener and will remember the questions, take note of them, and fulfill the needs. So they're usually strong openers. They're okay at the selling process. And most people utterly fail at the close because they don't have the courage or the confidence and they don't know how to do it, right? So the close also, people are scared of it because this is when the objections happen, right? This is when people give you reasons as to why they can't move forward. Does that make sense? Because you're asking for the order, you're placing yourself in a position where you can be isolated, you can be judged, you can be told no, right? So you need to first be able to, just like observing their body language, you need to observe whether or not you are getting a smokescreen or you are getting an objection. Now, the difference between the two, a smokescreen is an excuse that people use to misdirect you from closing them and making the deal because you haven't given enough value yet, basically. They are not certain whether it's in you, your company, or the product, right? So usually you'll hear smokescreens will say, I need to think about it, meaning there is no concrete reason or objection as to why they won't move forward. It is just a generalization. I need to think about it. I need to talk to my wife, and then an objection is, it's basically a legitimate concern that your prospect is going to give you that addresses a particular problem in the sales cycle as to why they will not move forward with the sale. And usually this is price, this is time, there's all different types of objections. Typically, both are handled in a very similar format when you're overcoming objections and smoke screens. The first thing you want to do is you always want to acknowledge it and endorse the reason. You want to validate what they're saying. Because if you don't validate what the counterpart is saying, do you feel like they're going to be able to appreciate it or heard or anything like that? No, they're going to think you're negotiating against them. You want to align yourself with that person. So you want to repeat back to them exactly what it is they said to you. Oh, you need to think about it. I completely understand. This is an incredibly big purchase, and it should 100% have thought put into it. The part that I'm unclear about is what exactly is it that you need to think about? And maybe we can think about it together because I am the industry professional. Is it the timing? Is it the pricing? And then I start isolating the objection or the smoke screen. Does that kind of make sense? I am acknowledging, asking questions, and then giving some answers, some examples of what it could be. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say that's the reason right there. So you have taken a smoke screen and found an actual objection. And then what you do is you just repeat the process. You loop the process again. Oh, I completely understand. Price. Price is the issue. Now I've taken a smoke screen and I'm at an actual objection. Now, I completely understand. Nobody wants to feel like they're overpaying for anything. Because if you're overpaying, you're getting undervalued and you're paying more than everybody else. And I know that I wouldn't want to feel like that. Now, one thing that I don't understand isn't about price. Is it that the interest rate is too high? Is it that the payment is too high? Is it because your friend paid more? Is it you're afraid that the house will not appraise? Whatever it is, you isolate again. So you acknowledge, identify, isolate. and then you shut up and listen. And you let them tell you the reason why. And you repeat the process over and over until it starts to get really thin to the point where you can overcome the objection and say, whatever your objection handlers are. And there are I'm not going to go through objection handlers because there are literally hundreds that you can use for each objection. When it comes to pricing, I mean, people can talk about interest rates, for example. One of the closest towards, well, is it the interest rate? They say, yes, it's the interest rate. Okay, I completely understand. You feel like interest rates are currently they're at a high, even though they have been higher in the past, and you'd be paying around a 5% interest rate. Instead, you're choosing to rent. Did you know that if you're choosing to rent, you're paying 100% interest? So I can save you 95, I can put 95% towards your principal here today. You can just give yourself permission to place an offer, and we'll inspect the house to see if it's up to your standards. You see what I did there? All I did was took their objection and I framed it. I put it in a different perspective. Somebody was talking about perspective. All I did was I framed it, and I gave them a new way of thinking. Now, this doesn't mean that they are going to accept my new way of thinking, but it's definitely more effective than just saying, okay, yeah, no, go think about it and call me later. Because how many of us do that or have done that? I know I've done that before. You know, you show the house and you're like, all right, well, have a great day. Let me know if you're interested. You know, see you later. You know, me, I usually give an next call to action. Okay, as you drive home, I'm establishing whether or not it works for them. As you drive home, call me when you get home. Let me know if you can see yourself in this house. Because if you think it's a good fit and you can see yourself in it, and I take them to the next logical step. I at least try to advance the sale. All right, outstanding. So we'll fly through scarcity for a little bit, and we're going to be closing out of this in like 10 minutes. So we're towards the end here. All right. So scarcity, also known as urgency, right? When you're driving scarcity to an individual, again, we're going to talk about at the end of this. Like, you don't drive scarcity if it's not good for the client. You know, you don't try to squeeze them into something that's not a good fit for them. How do we identify if things are a good fit for our clients? Asking questions and active listening. We're establishing their needs, you know. So, but people naturally have an inclination to want more of what they perceive is less, right? If there is less of something, they usually want it more. Think about times where you've been infatuated with somebody and they just didn't want you. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know what, screw it, I'm walking away. And then all of a sudden that person wants you, right? It's just like, it's common. It's just the way it goes down, right? So in other words, when a person finds out that something that they desire is in short supply, then they want it. So there's once again, there's direct scarcity and there's indirect scarcity, or there's direct urgency and there's indirect urgency. An example of direct urgency is, you know, hey, if you're not interested in the house, I'm going to sell it to someone else. I had another couple come in here. You know, that's a very direct, hard way to start closing people. What profession does that sound like? A car salesman, right? It's an aggressive, you know, short sales cycle, create as much urgency, like put people back on their feet, like, oh, listen, I had somebody put a deposit on it, but I like you more. And because I like you more, if you're willing to sign here today and walk out right now, I'll give you this black X5. By the way, I don't know if you know this. Black X5s are extremely rare. X5s are rare, but black, I haven't seen the black one in 6 months. I'm doing double scarcity tactics right there as a car salesman. You know, you should know these things because people are pulling this stuff on people all the time, right? And usually, and it usually works in a short sales cycle. In indirect sales, indirect scarcity is through like questions and like thought-provoking things, right? And usually these are an elongated sales cycle. I would highly advise, as a real estate professional, you use what's called indirect sales, where it's not you forcing the sale. It's literally the market, or it's you know, it's something else. It's the rates, or it's like we're going to give some examples of it, right? So for examples, like we can use scarcity as verbal, like, so this is using words to create urgency. and using, you're conveying knowledge, okay? And you're using words to persuade the customer. So, for example, in verbal, this is more like a direct urgency. And usually people use like a reasonable man tone to make it okay when they're trying to hard close you on something, because they want to sound reasonable, even though they're trying to force you into the next step, right? And so, you know, for example, it's like, hey, I know you love this house. And again, this doesn't really work well in an elongated sales cycle, because you'll get a lot of fallout during the inspection period, because you'll get a lot of regret. But it's like, hey, I know you love this house. And if you have good taste, other people have good taste. And I know you want to think on it, but while you're thinking on it and you're sleeping on it, other people will be sleeping in this house. You know, that is like a hard close, right? You know, and honestly, I've heard that. Like, I've heard people come into this profession thinking they know a lot about sales. You know, I choose to use more of an indirect sales approach and just be more like, hey, you know, I can tell that you really like this house and you're feeling that this will be good for you and your family. And based on my experience, I've had clients that get scared of placing an offer on the first house that they've seen before, because they think that there's something better out there. And based on my experience, what happens is they usually move on to see other houses, and they have good taste. But if they have good taste, other people usually have good taste. And while we're thinking on it and seeing other houses, other people may be more advanced in their sales cycle and they may commit to this house. And then going forward, you were going to treat this house like your high school sweetheart that got away. You're going to compare every house going forward to this particular house. So if you like it, drive home, talk with your spouse, and give yourself permission to move forward with the sale. Is that a hard close, or is that more of a passive close? But am I creating urgency at the same time? I'm not telling them what to do. I'm just framing the conversation for them. Now, it is still their choice. And if they make that choice, are they more likely to feel good about that choice? Yes. The key words for those were I used examples or analogies, right? High school boyfriends, high school sweetheart. I used phrase terms like give yourself permission. I wasn't saying if you don't move forward, you're going to lose out. I was saying, if you like it, just give yourself permission. I understand this is scary as fuck. It's the first time you ever bought something, or it's the second time and you're moving up. Your mortgage payment is one and a half times what it currently is. It is scary, but if you like it, you've worked hard. You've put in many years to save for this. Give yourself permission to move forward. It's such a strong line. So, and at the same time, I'll use tonal scarcity. That's again, use a whisper, a secret, right? I'll lower my voice to just above a whisper. And what I'll do is I'll intensify the prospect's desire for the house. Again, I want that high school boyfriend, by the way. That's an example that I have there. And informational, I'll explain information and how the market is in short supply, right? And we see the example towards the bottom there. You know, I'll usually frame what a normal market looks like. I'll say a buyer's market's about 6 months plus of inventory. The last couple of years, we've had about a half a month's worth of inventory. Now, we're currently at 2.5 months worth of inventory. This house has been on the market for about 20 days. You know, based on the way the market's going, you know, this house will be, if you like it, chances are other people like it, and someone will make an offer on it. It doesn't guarantee its listing price, but what I'm doing is indirect urgency. It's not me, it's the market, I think. And I'm using information to kind of just educate them. And this is more for the thinkers, right? This is more for the people that say, I think that this would be a good purchase. Or I think I want to have, like when you talk to them on the phone, hey, what's most important to you in a house? And they say, well, they usually go over the specs. I want 3 beds, 2 baths, 2,000 square feet. I want it in these 3 towns. Okay, why do you want that? Well, I think I need it in these 3 towns because the school system is dope. Usually thinkers don't use words dope. So, but you see what I'm saying? I already know. So this informational scarcity, that's when you would use this. Okay. So, what we can talk about after this in our networking portion, because we got 5 minutes left and I'm gonna close out this is, basically when you're learning about sales, your number one objective is how do I condense the sales cycle? I went over how your average real estate sales cycle is around 120 days. Basically, that's the average barometer that you can use for, between you and other real estate agents to measure your success of whether you will be a higher producer or not. If you can condense your sales cycle and people get people comfortable, establish the needs, find the features that benefit them in less than 120 days closing process, then you most likely are trending to be a higher producer. We do this through learning tactics that I'm not going to go over here today of how to convert open house leads and prospects into clients, right? How to get people to commit to buyer brokers. This is a very big problem in the industry. We're going to have a panel about professionalism during this course. A lot of people do show houses without buyer brokers, showing houses, have a system to be efficient for showing houses, leveraging houses against each other, because when you're showing clients houses, you want to show them more than one house. They get a feel for the market, but also if you pay attention to their body language, their tone, their vibration, their pace, the volume in each house, you can tell very quickly which house they're interested in. And you can start to kind of diminish one house and boost the other up. Because again, they're scared, they're doing the biggest purchase of their life. Sometimes they need a little bit of a nudge if you think it's good for them. You can create, I talk about things about creating indirect urgency to condense your sales cycles. I gave you guys a couple of examples about that. Some examples are you telling stories, you're making analogies, and you're using passive phrases, right? And another way that you can condense your sales cycle is getting great at asking for reviews and referrals, right? Because referrals tend to close quicker and more consistently than non-referrals. People that you meet in the street, internet leads, things like that. The referrals are very, very strong. So in closing, so we got 2 more slides. You have no power influencing others. You only have the power to influence yourself, but influencing yourself in return will influence others. I always try to end my things with little quotes. All right. If you like the course, I have other courses. If you guys aren't part of my brokerage, you can hire me. I can come in, I can teach you some things, I can give you some advice on it. I can teach you about sales, negotiation, processing emotion, social media, and accountability, amongst many other things, right? If you guys want to follow me, on every single slide, I have my website in the bottom left corner, and on the bottom right corner, you can find me at any of those social media channels. My handle is the same across all social media channels, okay? And I'm constantly talking about things of this nature. And then lastly, and this is the most important slide out of all of them, the most important slide, because the better salesperson you become, you can convince people to do things that probably aren't good for them. So you want to make sure that you are a fiduciary. You do things and you live with ethics. You don't convince people to do things that are bad for them. You help nudge them along towards an end result that is good for them. When you accepted your real estate license, you accepted the fact that you were signed in with the Department of Consumer Protection, that you are held at a fiduciary level. You are held to a higher standard than the regular member of society. It is very important to know that and acknowledge that. And you always want to operate in that, whether it's professional or you're at your child's school or the way you're talking in the street, whether you're committing crimes or not, you always want to pay close attention to that. You're not in sales for the sale, you're in sales for the referral. If you keep that mindset, that will ensure that you remain a fiduciary in the industry. So I hope you guys paid attention. I hope that I created some type of value in your life. I hope that you wrote a bunch of notes, and I hope that you pick one thing, just one thing, and implement it immediately, consistently over time. Try to implement it on a daily basis over the next 90 days. Also, one last objective. We're going to have lunch here. Try to stay for a little bit and talk to other people. Talk to them about their one thing that they learned. Talk to them about what their belief system is and why they do it is what they do. Get their contact information and stay connected with them. Come to our next course in about a month. Come to our YPN meeting in about a week. Stay connected. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. I bid you adieu. I don't know, Rachel, I'm starving up here. Savage. Can't help it.
Thanks, Alan. Go Mets.
Yeah.
Do you see me?
I can see you.
Nice, I can see you too.